Right, so after a very, very, very busy few months, finally we got back on a bank with the spotted fin lads. And unfortunately, it's horrible. You know what I mean? It's winter, it's just rubbish in here. I want to go back to catching loads of fish, but we've got something to do still. And what I want to focus on, it's something we've done a lot. You know what I mean? It's what you have to do in the winter. It's what I do a lot of, and it's your tidy pellet fishing in the winter. But what I want to emphasise a bit more today is the sort of the bait prep element of it, and making sure your bait's as good as it can possibly be, because I definitely think people fall short and have some dodgy pellets or whatever, so you just don't prepare things correctly. I want to talk about that, and I want to show a little edge that I've done for a long time in fishing tiny pellets on a hook. Do you know what I mean? It's not a new thing fishing 2 and 3 mil expanders, but there's a few little things that I definitely think you've got to bring into it to make it. It's so much better than fishing conventional 4 mils, and like the old school way of fishing a 4 mil expander with your micros. For me, it hasn't got a place anymore in the winter. I'd definitely rather sort of gearly things up and just give myself a better chance of getting a bite. But I'm going to talk about a bit more of that in a while. Well, first, what I want to do is talk about prepping my bait. So there's definitely a few steps in making sure my bait is better than anyone else's on the bank. I mean, it makes a difference. When we're only catching 15, 20, 30 fish on a very, very good day, them small numbers in having tiny little things that give you a better chance of catching a fish, I mean, it can put you 2 or 3 fish ahead, that makes all the difference when it comes to like winter F1-y sort of fishing. So first thing I want to talk about micro pellets. Yeah, it's where people definitely go wrong in just the way they prep them. I mean, I find there's too much of this. You drain your pellets for 1 minute if they're 1 mil size and whatever, draining pellets off and all that. For feeding on a pole, I don't think you need to drain your pellets off ever. I think you just want to cover them in water, and as long as you have a good quality pellet that will allow you to do it, you end up with the most beautiful micro pellets. As long as you cover them to just the right amount, which I'm going to show you in a minute, you just get the most perfect micro pellets that are micro pellets. They're all nice individual pellets. They've swollen up to the maximum, and they're pretty much what I'm after is that they're going to blend into my tiny hook bait as much as possible, which is trying to achieve. I can feed them a lot better as well, but again, we'll talk about that in a bit. So I've got my pellets, first thing I want to do, and I've got my water ready. In fact, I want to put some stinky stuff in my water as well. So I'm a bit of a fan of that. I'm not massively obsessed with my flavours, but what I'm definitely feeling at the minute, for my sweet ones, all this year I've used sweet flavours. I've used that caramel bait sauce and I've used my F1 stuff, but when it gets really cold, the only way I can look at it, and this is talking to all these carpy lads, is that by adding attractors, aminos, whatever else, all the fancy words that they use for all their liquids that they put on, it gives me that 1 to 10% chance of a fish having my bait, whereas it wouldn't. So, I mean, it makes my bait stand out. I mean, and anything that might give me a chance of catching more fish, I mean, why not? Do you know what I mean? Not having the stuff on just blends it in with everyone else. I'm fishing the same pellets as everyone else, whereas having, you know what I mean, a bit of a sweet smell, a bit of just something to make my bait stand out again, because it's already going to be so small and blending in with my pellets, it'll just make it pop out a little bit. It might catch me that 1 to 10% more fish. You know what I mean, if it gets me a bite, I'll do it. So I'm definitely into putting some sweet flavours on, not oils, so it's got to be a sweet, something that's like glycerin based that's going to dissolve really nicely in the winter because the water temperature is so low. So I've whacked that in my water straight away. It's the first thing I want to do. And before I do anything, I'm going to tip a little bit of that water out into there, because that's going to be for my expanders in a minute that we'll talk about. So I've literally got inch of water in the bottom of my tub. I'm going to whack my pellets out. And what I want to do is just have it so my pellets are just beneath that water. Give them a swirl. And then if our Rich can do some zooming in, then the pellets are going to be just covered. I mean, they've probably got 2 or 3 mil of water. Let me get rid of a little tiny bit of them. Get rid of them floaties. 2 or 3 mil of water just over the top of them. Yeah, and now honestly, literally, I normally do that before I leave. I'll literally go to my tap in the back garden, just cover my pellets, and then leave them. You know what I mean? I'll put them in my car, I'll go fishing, and when I get on the bank, they'll be absolutely phenomenal. And if I'm honest, we were just talking about this as well, they're actually better the next day as well. In the winter, when you can get away with it because the temperatures are cold, the pellets that I do on a Saturday morning for Sunday's match, they're even better again. They just toughen up a little bit more. And I've got some already. You know what I mean? I was actually fishing a match yesterday, caught nothing, but let's not talk about that. And I've got my pellets left over from them. I've got a little maggot in there as well. But you'll see with them, we're going to zoom in on them in a minute as well. They're all perfect individual pellets. Which is what I want. They're big. You know what I mean? Compared to what they are when they're dry in packet. Pellets everywhere. They swell up massive. You know what they do? What? Tripled in size will you give me on that? Do you know what I mean? They're big old pellets. They really do puff up and go nice. And what they give me is nice individual particles all in my peg that I can control what I'm feeding. It's not a case of just lumping in a blob of micro pellets that I haven't got a clue how many that's in, which is all right in the summer, but now I can literally tap in. I can nearly count them. I can count 5 to 10 pellets just going in my peg. I can see what response I get. I can feed them again. I can do whatever. But I know what's going in my peg all the time because my pellets are just a little bit bigger, and they just allow me to see what's going on. A little sneaky thing I will do as well is I'll hook one of them occasionally, but it can be a little bit fiddly, and now I've got some decent expanders, I don't need to. But say hooking a micro pellet used to be a massive edge that I used to do a lot of. So I'll happily leave them now. They normally take about an hour. They're going to be for Richard's match tomorrow. No, I've done them. But yeah, they're going to give me nice individual pellets that I can feed properly. And I'd say I know what's going in my peg. I control what's going in my peg. Next up, semi-expanders. Yeah, I've done 2 different types of expanders for today. I've done some 4.5s and I've done some of the 3 mils. Yeah, the 4.5s, I don't know why I do them. I literally waste thousands of pints of these 4 mils every single year because I do a little bag for every single match, and I must use 2 or 3 of them. Because every time I put a 4 mil on these days, especially in the winter, I've just got no confidence whatsoever in that bait getting picked out unless it's really, really, really good. I tend to just use a 4 mil if for silver matches or if I'm getting plagued by tiny fish. That's when a 4 mil comes into it now. But my theory with a 4 mil expander is that you fish it over the top of micro pellets, it always stands out. Which is, it's all right for the stupid hungry ones like me. I'd get caught all the time on one. But I definitely think that fish, they've been caught on a 4 mil expander that much, why we continue eating it. You know what I mean? It's the one that stands out. It's the one that every time they eat it, they end up in the keep net. So for me, I can't do it. I can't put a 4 mil on anymore. So what I want to do is by using my little tiny ones, me 3s, which are actually, I reckon they're a little bit smaller than that. They're probably a 2.5. In fact, I want to talk about all prep them first. Yeah, it looks the same as them 5 micro pellets that I'm feeding. My hook bait looks exactly the same. So if the fish are in the peg to eat those micro pellets, then they're going to eat my expander. There's no reason they can avoid it. Whereas a 4 mil, yes, it could stand out, but I also think they think, no, why is that odd one out there? I'm not having that. So we don't catch many on that. So 2 mils for me. But yeah, we've seen this before. Something I've talked about loads is prepping them. And with the 2 mils, or the 3 mils, we're going to call them, I think it's very, very important to prep them in this way. You can't give a tiny expander too much water because it goes very soft, because there's so much or so little volume to it in the first place. By giving it too much water, it does break down quite a little bit. So literally I'll put an amount in the corner of a bag, just cover them in water, and then I squish it all down so that they are covered in water, but there's no excess water. And what that creates is a very, very dense pellet in that they soften up, but because it's so dense in the corner of that bag, they've got no room to expand. So they actually stay quite tight, but they go nice and soft still. Soft still. So I can literally get them now, give them a little scrunch up. And there I end up with quite, I want to use the word dry, but they're not dry. They've soaked up the water, they've gone nice and soft, but they're still nice and dense. Do you know what I mean? I can still get a hook in them, I can give it a few big Zorda strikes, and they're not going to come off. I mean, it just allows more durability, so I know that pellet's always on. And you can see with them, if I whiz them out the bag now, size-wise, they pretty much blend in, not far off perfectly with my micro pellets. I mean, which means that they don't stand out, the fish eat them by accident almost. So, when we bait prepped, I'm fairly happy with everything. I'll talk about how we're going to hook them in a minute. I'm going to get some rigs sorted. I'm just going to show you a few little tweaks to my rig. I think it's very important to, well, it's very difficult to get this bait to show up on your float. I mean, it's such a tiny bait, the 2 mil expanders. It's nigh on impossible to get them to register on your bristle. So there's a few things that I think you need to do just to enhance them bites so you can see things a little bit better. So all my bait sorted. What I want to go through next is it's a bit riggy. That's what I want to talk about, using the correct sort of rigs for presenting these really little delicate baits, because it does make a big difference in just fining things up a little bit just to see what's going on. I mean, the bites can be so minute, if you like, with this tiny little bait with the fish you're catching at the time of year. So you need as many components to help you out as possible, just so you can see what's going on. I mean, both in terms of seeing bites and actually reading what's going on in my peg as well. By having a few little things I'm going to talk about now, it just helps me to see what's going on a little bit better. Saying it definitely makes a difference putting a couple more fish in my net. So what am I going to do? Let's start at the top end. So I've got I've got about 4.5 foot. I have got 4.5 foot. Yeah, I plumbed a nice little dodgy peg, 4.5 foot. Which for me, 4.5 foot in the winter, as long as it's not too windy, I'm going to use a 4x14's float. And that's what I've got on, exactly that. A wire stem, which helps aid stability. 4x14's float, which in this case, so it's an old Malman Benny they are. I must have had these for I must have been using them 10 years now. I've had that same batch for probably 10 years. I think I'm down to my last 3 or 4 actually phone cards last week. But anyway, and what that incorporates is a 1.2mm hollow bristle, which is quite unusual. You don't get too many hollow bristles. That's sort of fine, but for my winter pellet fishing, do you mean I've never found a better float that it allows me to shot my floats easily because it's got a little bit of buoyancy with it being hollow, but at the same time with it being 1.2mm, it's as delicate as I can get while still remaining. Do you mean I can still shot it properly? It's not too messy abouty like a fibre bristler be or a solid plastic bristler be. So yeah, that 1.2 hollow bristle. So it just helps it stand out, helps me see things while not being too positive, and it helps show the bites up nice and quick. Down the bottom end, so it is shotted up very, very conventionally how I'd shot up a soft pellet rig, how I've done it for years and years and years and years. And I've simply got, with a 4/14 float, I've got, it should be 6 number 9. So yeah, I've got 6 number 9 shot. I've got a few fine tuners underneath me, underneath the stem of my float that just mark my depth and get my bristle exactly how I want it. But at the bottom end, the bit that does the job, so I've just got 5 number 9 shot, nice and positive. It's going to keep it right where I want it. That knot looks a bit dodgy. I'll have a look at that in a minute. Most important part of this is where I've got my shot positioned. Yeah, I've spoke loads about having it nice and strung out when fishing on that far shelf, which I'm not going to touch on too much today. So I just want that nice curve that I've talked about 100 times in different videos. But for the winter, what I do a little bit differently to the summer is I'm a big believer in getting that last shot on my hook length. Yeah, I don't like using tiny little 3 and 4 inch hook lengths in the winter, just because I think the knot's right in front of the fish. It puts me off a little bit. And I also don't like how, no matter how well or how tight you pull your loops, so I use quite a positive mainline. I use no 16 mainline because it's durable and doesn't tangle and it's just better. But you find that your loops are quite fat because of it. Yeah, and by putting a shot on my hook length, so the first thing that it does, it straightens those loops out just by having a little bit of weight. Get that hook on my finger. It keeps my loops nice and straight. You know what I mean? There's no kicking out of the loops. They're not spreading because they've got a bit of weight underneath them that helps pull them straight, which to me makes my rig look a little bit nicer as it's sat there. I mean, it just looks in a straight line as long as that wind's not blowing it all over the place. Secondly, by having that shot, again, something I spoke about before, as close as I possibly can to the hook. So that's a big old shot. That's a number 9. What are you going to give me? 4.5 inches away from my hook. Yeah, by having it so close, it shows up things quicker. Yeah, I'm not bothered about catching fish on the drop on that. I'm not going to be feeding or fishing in a way to allow that to happen. So what I want is that rig to be held as stationary as possible with that big shot. And as soon as a fish dislodges my bait, I'm going to see something happen on my float as quickly as possible. Because my bait's so small, I haven't got the added advantage of that being incorporated into my shotting like I would in the summer. Now I've just got to do things as best as I can to try and achieve that, but I still won't be able to see it just because my float's too positive to be able to see with such a tiny bait. So that shot tells me everything. Yeah, by having that shot as big and as close to the hook as possible within reason. Obviously I can't, there's a big lad there. I can't have it within 2 or 3 inches because it just looks nasty. You know what I mean? I tend to find that 4 to 5 inches is the optimum sort of distance to have it, probably because of the depth you're fishing as well. You find that in the winter it's very, very rare I find myself fishing less than probably 3 foot. So it's always 3 to 6 foot that you're fishing in. So that 4 inches for your first shot with a pellet rig just seems about perfect. So that's what we got. I've got little tiny black hook on, little tiny fine wire 16, and that's again just to make my bait look right. Yeah, I don't want to use little tiny hooks. I also don't want to use conventional pellet type hooks because they just don't look right with my pellet on. I mean, I want something that matches that pellet beautifully and it's going to hide my bait in it. So my rig's sorted. Next thing I want to do is get some bait ready. So prepping them the way that we do, so all my pellets are going to float. That's the only downside of it, but not an issue because they all stay nice. So what I want to do is just put a little tiny pinch in there in the water that I've already put some flavouring in, and I'm going to pick a big lad, and just by squeezing it I can see that sinks, and now I've got a nice dense pellet that hasn't took on loads of water, but it's as heavy as it can possibly be, so it retains its stiffness sort of thing, if you like, because I've only just put it in the water, but it's nice and heavy because it's full of water. So I'm going to be able to, it's going to show up the best I can possibly achieve. It's going to keep that line nice and tight because my bait's got a bit of weight to it, whereas if I just hooked it on au naturel sort of thing, it probably would sink. My hook's heavy enough to take them down, but it'd be a bit wafty, and I don't want that. I mean, I want a nice straight line, so as soon as a fish pulls on mine, another one, as soon as a fish pulls on my hook bait and moves that shot, so I want that line as tight as it can possibly be all the time, so the shot gets moved as quickly as possible and I see a bite, see what's going on. So with everything done, oh, we're catching fish now. Right, so my expander pellet is impaled. I've got a nice little one on, and I've had a couple of sneaky casts. There's some fish in my peg. So all I'm going to feed, I'm going to put sort of 15 to 20 micros in. You know what I mean? Because the micros are so big, I can see I'm putting 15 to 20 micros in. Do you know what I mean? It looks, I can regulate, that's a good word, isn't it? I can regulate my feed a lot better because my pellets are a little bit bigger than the norm. So they're all nice little round lovely ones. So we picked a flipping awkward peg for shipping. So, like I said, there's fish already in my peg. So what I'm going to do is literally, because I want to keep on attracting fish into my peg because I'm sort of early in the session, I don't want to put all my bait in. So literally I'm just going to tap 3 or 4 pellets in. I mean, I can see them, probably a few more then, probably half a dozen went in then. And by having that constant bait to begin with falling through the water, it gives me the best chance of attracting new fish into my swim nice and quick. Yeah, but as long as I don't do it too regular, then I'm going to keep the fish on the bottom. They're going to stay where I want them to. That was like too good then, wasn't it? So let me whiz him back. I'm being really careful not to spill them pellets. Yeah, because I know that I've still got a feed's worth of pellets in my cup, or 2 feeds worth. The last thing I want to be doing them is spill them out there. Do you know what I mean? Once I'm here, I'm not bothered. They can come out. But the last thing I want to do is hook my fish, and have bait flicking all over the place and spreading bait all over my peg. I don't want to do that. So I'll either, if there's lots of fish feeding, which I think there could be, I'll hook the fish and then I'll put my pellets in if I've got any left. Or if I feel it's going to be a little bit tricky and I'm not getting many bites, then what I want to do is bring my bait all the way back. I don't want to be feeding bait that I'm not sort of using. Do you know what I mean? There's no need to put them 20 pellets in because the fish are already in my peg. All I'll be doing is filling them up quicker. So instead, I want to be feeding the bare minimum. So every time I go in now, what I'm going to keep doing is reducing the pellets less and less and less. So that time I put sort of 10 in. Because what it gives me is if I'm getting a bite off the first tap or the first little sprinkle every single go, then there's no need to have an extra bit of bait in the cup. Because all it gives me a chance of doing and then is spreading my bait all over the place. Instead, doing it in this way, there's less chance of me spoiling a peg, and it sort of prolongs the life of my swim because I'm not feeding too much. So same again, before that rig's gone in, I'm just going to tap in a tiny few. It really, really is minimal. Like I say, I think we've just got lucky and we've gone in, there's a little gang already in front of us. But by fishing the bait we've got on, that tiny little, it's a little roach eating me float then. By fishing that tiny little expander on the hook, it blends in. So then 5, 10, whatever micro pellets that I'm feeding, I've now got the same thing on my hook. So the fish can't make any difference. So if they're coming in to eat those micro pellets, then they're going to eat my bait as well. I mean, there's no way of them avoiding it because it blends in as much as it possibly can. Do you know what I mean? Very similar to fishing hard pellets in the summer, exactly what I do. I'm going to get that bait in case I've got any left. So in the summer I fish hard pellets almost exclusively that much. Simply because I can feed a 4 mil, I can feed a 6 mil, I can feed an 8 mil, I can put them on the hook. And I mean, there's no way of the fish distinguishing the difference other than the big dirty hook that's in it. Little tiny stockies. Catching them, they're proper winter ones, aren't they? At least we get some bites. So you see where the hooked as well. I did show you the last one. But because of the shot where I've got that shot right at the top of my hook length. So yeah, right at the top end of my hook length, that spat the hook out, that one. Every single fish that you catch, you'll almost never need a disgorger. If you need a disgorger, something's wrong. Yeah, it means that you were over depth, you didn't see your bite quick enough. So because my shot is so close to my hook, and my bite just showing up so quickly, I'm not actually going to feed this cast. Every single fish you hook should be hooked right in the top left, or right accessible. So if it's at the back of its throat, then something was wrong. You've pushed your rig too far up the slope, or something wasn't right. So I'm just going to have a go. I want to try and feed. So I want to feed as little as I possibly can at this time of year. Yeah, the last thing they're going to want is loads of bait. And the more bait I feed, the quicker I'm going to fill up this little gang of fish that are in my peg. So if I can get away with maybe feeding every other fish, then that's going to be mega. This is proper rich, isn't it? Why can't we come here every time? Ooh, that one fell off, that one. Little diddy fish. So that's a big thing with your expanding and microfishing at this time of year. So when you decide to feed, it's massive. I mean, it can't be a case, or very rarely can it be a case, of simply feeding every single cast. I mean, just filling a big cup and cupping it in, or even a little cup. You wouldn't even fill that every single cast, because you're going to spoil your pegs very, very quickly. It's about making the absolute most and giving yourself the best chance of coming back with a fish, I mean, as regular as possible. So putting big lumps of bait in, dead similar to my summer mentality, or big numbers of bait in, it just gives the fish more options. So if there's only 20 fish in my swim, and I feed 100 micro pellets in 5 casts, then very, very quickly they've got a lot of micro pellets each to feed, and they're quickly going to get full up, and I'm going to stop getting bites at this time of year, because they're not going to eat like mad all day. So we're fishing on that slope. That's worth something mentioning as well, is every time I strike I have to relay my rig, because it's such a steep slope. It's really, really steep there where I'm fishing. If I were to lift and drop, then it sort of messed my rig up. I mean, when it's got laid in, let me just push that up a little bit more. When it gets laid in, as long as I put it right in the perfect spot, then I know that my rig's tight. Whereas if I miss a bite, then it'll probably make my rig swing further up the slope, and it'd be incorrect if I was to just lower it down again. Is that a bit bigger? There's plenty of fish. See, I've not fed for, if I looked at that last one and I've gone in and looked this one, still not fed nothing. So it just goes to show the tiny, tiny amounts of bait. As long as you're in the right location, the right depth, whatever where the fish want to be. So you just want to make the most of it by putting tiny, tiny amounts of bait in and making the most of it. I mean, I could have easily fed 20, 40 pellets even in the time. I mean, and I've still got a bite, but I'd have 20 to 40 micro pellets on the bottom of my peg now, which would slowly build up and build up and build up with every single cast. And in the end, it'd be a mess. This is a proper one, Rich. What's going on here? This went in the script, wasn't it? Ooh, go on. He's going to have a pole in a minute. It's meant to be the stocky lake, isn't it? What are you going for? Is he foul hooked or is he in mouth? See, we're fishing such tiny little baits. I've only got really girly kit on. That's a proper one. I've got 09 on and a really fine wire hook, so you've got to be delicate, but it's amazing, even with kit like that. As long as your elastic doesn't overpower it, you can land anything almost. Cue fish racing off and snapping me. Proper enough, isn't it? Look at that. A mega for a 2.5 mil expander, or 3 mil, but I'm going to say the 2 because I pick a little one out. Do you know what I mean? It's amazing. You wouldn't ever think a fish of that sort of size would even be interested in it. Oh, he's one-eyed William. See him in, hooked right with her. I want it to be right in there. Right accessible, nice and easy. How'd you hook in the bottom lip? You think that'd be impossible, wouldn't you? But it happens. Still, with a 2 mil expander, it is crazy the fish you can catch. Just because I think they come in your peg and they avoid the 4 mil. I mean, I definitely think the 2 mils at this time of year, when they're not really wanting to eat, it's amazing the difference a 2 mil can make. And so just putting them extra few fish in your net.